Welcome to Unsilent with your hosts Dave and Brian. This is not another current events podcast. We are digging deeper, diagnosing, and discussing what's really going on today, how we got here, and providing observations for future generations.
Welcome to Unsilent. We're Brian and Dave. We'd love to hear where you think we got it right and where we just don't know what the heck we're talking about. That's a possibility. You can do that by checking us out on Rumble. There's a comment section there, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, unsilentpodcast.com is our wonderful website. So, Brian, let's see, another week. It's holiday season, so everybody's happy about everything. There's no turmoil, controversy in the world. Well, maybe that's not exactly accurate.
Yeah.
I don't know.
100%. I guess it depends on what you're paying attention to. It's funny. I've not spent a lot of time immersed in any kind of media this week. But I have seen there's like a new revived fervor of not saying Christmas, I guess, at Christmas time. So and then there's the counteraction, which is all the uproar, like how dare you not say Christmas?
Right.
It kind of feels like, no matter what, there's got to be some kind of controversy.
Of course.
I will say I went to a shopping mall, a good sized shopping mall, for the first time in, I don't know, a couple of years probably. I don't go to the shopping mall much. No, like everybody's in a good mood. So it kind of still feels like, for Kenny G, the guy we're talking to 70 years in the future, who's going to wonder what was wrong with us as we go through this era. I think it's important to keep kind of coming back to that. Like, if you pay attention to the media and the news and whatever, there's constant uproar.
Right.
But if you go outside and talk to your neighbor, or you go to the mall, or you go to the gas station, 99% chance, like, people just going along and getting along.
I think that's, I was thinking after our episode last week, and, I think this periodically after we talk about the things we talk about, it could seem like it could seem doom and gloom, right? I mean, because there's plenty of that. There's plenty of legitimate, threats. There's plenty of legitimate, are we going to war, or is it going to be a civil war? There's plenty of that. But at the same time, there's always a big bulk of undercurrent of people living their lives and, raising their kids and, saying Merry Christmas to each other. And I've been in several meetings this week where nobody's scared to say Merry Christmas. People are like, yeah, hey, Merry Christmas. Yeah. And oftentimes all I'll say is Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and whatever other festive saying you want to say, go for it, Yeah. So I do think there's always, even in these tumultuous times, like fourth turning times like we're in right now, or even these, multi-millennial times, whatever you want to call them, I do think there's still a significant amount, or the majority, I would say, are people living their lives and doing human things and enjoying their grandchildren and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it feels like you could not possibly have the energy to just be plugged into all the nonsense all the time. You have to be in a very small percentage of people, whether you're in the Antifa camp or you're in the whatever the counter conservative camp would be to that. Like, for that to be just like every waking moment, that's your purpose in life. I mean, very few people have that kind of capacity of time and energy to devote to something like that.
Well,
most people
burnout.
need to go home and cook dinner and like change diapers and
it would burn you out too. I mean, I think, as much as I get excited about various political things and current events things, I think if you just live in that space all the time, if you live in that, I used to call it the Church of Perpetual Anger, Church of Perpetual Outrage, rather. If that's your life, if that's where you derive meaning from, then it's going to be a pretty, dismal life. I mean, even if you think back, there were millennia where people lived doing subsistence farming. If they ate the next day, it's because they were able to farm or hunt or catch a rabbit or whatever. I mean, we don't have any problems like that. But even they lived happy lives, on in their dirt floor huts, and their thatched roofs that you got to climb up, and I mean, so
Yeah.
I think perspective, I guess the message there is, and that's a good, Christmas message. Perspective's important. Perspective's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, for sure. So I only have a couple things. I want to show you this chart that I found kind of fascinating. And to set it up, we talk about the fourth turning, which has four turnings. The first turning is kind of the new dawn, if you will. I can't remember the name that they used to paraphrase that era, but it's like the new dawn after, so
Right.
like, post World War II from 1946, let's say 1945 to like 1967, 68, somewhere was kind of that
Right.
first turning. And coming out of that, we have all new institutions. We have structures that everybody is 100% in support of. I mean, very, very few exceptions, but by and large,
Right.
not very many people in 1947 were anti-American.
Right. Right.
I'm sure they were out there, but if they were, nobody listened to them, and everybody was united, and we had just survived this massive, catastrophic series of events. And then what we now call the 60s, which is kind of funny because up until 1966, 67, relatively mild. And then by 1968, like we're in this full blown spiritual awakening. So the
Yeah.
awakening
Yeah.
is the second turning.
Yep.
And then we come from this kind of boring, all the institutions are in place, but now we have no what is it, like maybe philosophical or
Right.
religious,
There's no
like
depth to it.
it's just too boring. Like
Yeah.
we're creatures who want to be self-actualized and whatever,
Yeah.
right? So then we
Yeah.
have this spiritual awakening with free, make love not war, and Woodstock and the hippies dancing around and everybody's naked and having sex and doing drugs and all, like, whatever. Okay. So we have that era. And then
Right.
we go into the third turning, which is all about personal, all success is about individuals.
Right.
And like you look at the 80s, like the moonwalk was a famous dance, like the only dance you can do by yourself.
Right.
And it all starts kind of coming apart, and then we get into the fourth turning, which is the crisis era, right?
Right.
So the unraveling is that third era where we've kind of peaked, but we don't really know we peaked yet. So somewhere based on that timeline and those turnings, somewhere after the awakening phase is where things kind of start not improving but getting worse as far as institutions and things like that go. So
Right.
that's like the pinnacle, right? So I saw this chart that, because I'm fascinated when I see things that kind of line up with that,
Right.
that kind of align with that period of time of like what specifically breaks, in that
Sure.
period.
Sure.
And I saw this chart and I was like, holy smokes, this is definitely something that legitimately broke right there in that era, which is this is a chart going back to 1948, and it shows growth in productivity and hourly compensation, right? So it starts, for those of you listening audio only, it starts in the bottom left-hand side. 0 is the baseline, 1948. And then it shows a yellow line and a red line traversing up and to the right, like you would see a graph that goes up and to the right. And it's both productivity, like workers' productivity, and hourly compensation. And as you can see, Dave, they're lockstep. Like
Right.
productivity
100%.
is going up into the right and compensation is going up into the right. And they stayed joined until 1972, when both have gone up 90.84%.
Right.
And then in 1972, they break. And compensation kind of hovers and meanders over to the right pretty much in a straight line, and it ends up around 2017 at 115%. So only up from 91% essentially to 115%.
Yeah.
But productivity is up to 246% from that 90.84 or 91%. And there was a very clear break in 1972 where they no longer stayed in alignment, right? And if you listen to like the Ray Dalios of the world, and you listen to people who study history and economics and things like that, one of the common threads is the revolutions happen when the disparity between the haves and the have-nots becomes too big.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's essentially one of the major catalysts. There's
Yeah.
others, of course, but and if you look at the Great Depression. Like why was there talk about punting capitalism in favor of
Right.
communism?
Hmm.
So what do you think happened? I mean, I have a theory, but I don't know. You were there. You're in mid-40s, probably 1972. So what do you think happened in 1972 that caused this break?
Now, isn't that, I'm trying to think about, yeah, I mean, of course, we had the global energy crisis. We had I mean, that was the middle of the Nixon administration and and Watergate and all of that. But economically, is that when the Bretton Woods standard went away? I think that's about the time. I'm not probably.
Forgive me for not having all these things memorized. What is the Bretton Woods standard?
Well, okay, so that's when. So there's international standards of, and I'd have to pull this out of my brain, and it won't be 100% accurate. But that's when the international economic standards changed, where the pinning of. I'm going to explain this wrong, so I probably better not do it.
Well, I think we're talking about the same thing. This is when we went off the gold standard. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So
was
it's all the
more
same thing. That was
yeah.
my
Simple
theory.
explanation. Yes,
Around the time that we went off the gold standard. I don't know
yes.
what Bretton Woods is. You'll have to
Yeah, well,
forgive me.
that's the next level down. Yeah, so it's all
Okay.
connected. Yes, but it gold standard with the Bretton Woods. Yeah.
Okay. So it seems, looking at that chart, that's where productivity keeps going up at a pretty rapid incline,
Yes.
but wages stagnate and just kind of meander and drift to the right of the chart, more or less flat up a little bit, from
Right.
91% to 115% over the course of 35 years or
Yeah.
45 years or whatever it is. Does that seem like a coincidence to you, or does that seem like a moment where something quote unquote broke?
Well, it clearly it broke, and clearly to me, it because when I looked at that, that's the thought that started to percolate in my mind, because all of the gains after the gold standard was ditched, and the way all the gains from those productivity gains didn't go to the average worker at that point. Now I sound like a communist. All of the gains that happened as a
Dave's
result.
Workers Party. We're going to start a new political party here. Dave's
Unite,
Worker Party.
unite. All of the gains at that point didn't go to them, but went to the people who could manipulate the system. So
Yeah.
it was because capitalism tied, or free market economics, when it's tied to a specific standard, tend to accrue to whoever can, work within that standard. In this case, they tended to accrue to whoever can manipulate the system, because it was unhinged from a physical standard in gold and the rest of it.
Yeah. It seems like probably not right around there, but here's what I'm thinking. It's like somewhere, I've talked about the decline of duty. That you look at, like you talk about the GI who came home from World War II. He had tremendous duty in whatever trenches he fought in and things like that.
Right.
And he would come home and not talk about it. And then now here we are in 2025, where people by and large want credit for things that are, somewhat maybe trivial.
Right.
Right. There's a economic theory, or method, I guess you might call it, called rent seeking, which is where people make money without actually contributing and helping other people in meaningful ways. So a simple example is, I heard this story one time about a guy who would search the internet and find pieces of property that had an easement. Like the example they used was, he bought a small piece of property, like a tenth of an acre. But that piece of property, which had somehow gone to some lost and found for properties, I don't know how that stuff works, but the owner of the adjacent property had to cross this little tiny property to get, like, their driveway went across it, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And so he buys this little tiny parcel of land for $5,000 or whatever, and then sends the owner of the adjacent property, who has to traverse this to get to their house,
Right.
a letter that says, hey, either buy my property that that I own, or you need to stop using my property.
Right.
And it's basically like a legalized extortion.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
So that would be an example of rent seeking, where you're you're making money, but you're not building anything. You're not contributing.
You're
You're not making people's
no
lives
creation.
better. That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if like the confluence of those two things, going off the gold standard, and then enough self-respect in the duty arena had diminished to where this kind of rent-seeking activity might begin around that time, kind of halfway through the cycles. Does that make any sense?
It absolutely does. On a domestically speaking, I think that's what happened is the economic prosperity of the country was no longer tied specifically and only to productivity, but it was tied to rent seeking and other activities that didn't actually create anything new or add anything new. And then just for context sake, the Bretton Woods standard was related is how the U.S. reserve currency in the world became dominant and when it was unpegged from gold. So therefore, you could manipulate U.S. currency and manipulate U.S. fiscal policy to make gazillions of dollars. So on the international stage, that's where the whole Bretton Woods thing comes in. So you've got both of those things happening that involve no actual creation of anything beneficial. It's just
jobs or ROI for investors or
R&D
structure or things like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so therefore then those that have the power tend to accrue more power. Those that have the money tend to accrue more money, regardless of whether or not they contribute anything to the system at all.
Right. So in my and by the way, the story I'm citing, I'm getting the details wrong, but it's a real story that was used to illustrate this point. They had documents to support, like they showed what the guy did, where he bought this little parcel of land and whatever. So it's not a made up story, but people who are, in the steel mills making their hourly wage and their wife is a school teacher or whatever, they don't in 1975, they don't have the funds to even buy that parcel of land. They don't even think along the ways of like that's a way to make money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not at all.
So only the wealthy people who have access to the resources to do that kind of thing, and the people going into that third turning where it's all about me and what can I accomplish, and you have this subset of people who have a lot of money who are willing and now able to extract dollars rather than sell value, right?
Yeah, and that becomes kind of the hip thing to do as well. I mean, I remember in the 80s and 90s there were all these ways that people talked about of gaming the system. So we're going to go buy lists of foreclosure properties and we're going to sell those. So we're going to sell a property before we buy it. We're going to get the property under contract and sell it before we buy it. And then when we get the money from the person we're selling it to, we finish the transaction and keep the difference. So, and there was all of this, there was all these, and that went through till today. The simplest way of thinking of this is even in like flipping houses, which is a legitimate thing to do. I'm not saying flipping houses is,
but you're adding value. You make the cabinets better. You paint it. You whatever. And the convenience of having all that stuff done for the buyer is worth something.
Exactly.
They don't have to buy the house and then they have to change the cabinets and do the painting. Like the convenience is adding value.
Right. But in this, I don't even want to call, I mean, it is capitalism, right? It's using capital to make money as opposed to creating value to make money. This is why I've been uncomfortable with the word capitalism for a while, in favor of the word free market system. In a free market system, I trade my ideas and I trade my labor and I trade, whatever I've got for money from somebody else. In a capitalistic system, you've got rent seeking, you've got people making the most money out of interest and out of, that kind of way of making money is not adding anything to, and I'm going to, I'm not saying that we should become, like Islamic countries where you can't charge interest. It's illegal to charge interest, and but Yeah, on the flip side of that, I think that does contribute significantly. It's probably the greatest contributor to the the wage gap and to the wealth gap that,
Yeah.
as you said, causes
Well, and I
revolutions.
think there's gradients to all this stuff. Like I remember taking an SBA loan, and it was worth every penny. The interest I
Yeah,
paid
sure.
worth every penny.
Yeah,
And I don't remember the exact number, but I remember one time 15 years ago seeing a credit card, not one of mine, but it was like on the news or something like that, or it was an illustration of a thing where the credit card APR was like 35%. I
sure.
would argue that's not great.
No, that's
You know,
usury, I think. Yeah.
so there's gradients, all this stuff. I guess what I'm just thinking as I saw that chart and I started thinking about this rent seeking thing, I was like, I cannot imagine a situation where that same GI who went over and fought valiantly in World War II and came home and wouldn't tell his kids and grandkids all the honorable, respectful, perhaps even heroic things he did. That
Right.
guy, no way in the world would that guy do a rent seeking thing, even if he had the funds. No
Sure.
way.
Sure.
The same guy could not do both those things, I don't believe.
Right. Right. Yeah, because there was a general belief in the first turning of this last cycle in the American way, in fairness, in treating your fellow person as a valuable human being. All of that. Wage earners were noble people. All of that.
Yeah. There's also another element to this, which is in times of crisis where institutions become less reliable and when I say tribe, I don't mean the tribe that you want to talk about, like the left tribe and the right tribe, but like
Yeah.
your immediate social circle
Sure.
becomes more dominant. Your reputation matters tremendously with your social circle through times of crisis, or even
Sure.
if you look at times of not crisis back, or you look at the indigenous tribes in Chile that have no contact with the outside world.
Right.
Their reputation in that tribe matters supremely, right? But over time, as we come out of the crisis, like in our big collective society, we come out of the crisis where that reputation mattered, and things like shame were guardrails or your behavior. Well, that stuff just kind of drifts off,
Yeah.
and the same duty and shame decline that we talk about pretty regularly here, it would seem to be bad about 25 years past that era. Like
Sure.
people be like, hey, I can go make a buck over here and nobody's going to know. Or even if they do, screw them. Like, what do I care? Right. It all
Right.
seems to kind of line up.
Well, and I think we have to then redefine all of our terms to fit the new reality. So, for instance, shame then becomes only a useful thing to serve these small subsets of groups that we've got, and or shame can be useful for media manipulation in order
Sure.
to do the rent seeking, to do the money making, and to do the power accumulation. So
Yeah.
as one example, but all of these things then I think fit into that more mercenary worldview at that point.
Yeah. It seems to all kind of align that the less your reputation matters to get by in life,
Yeah.
say around 1975,
Right.
removing ourselves from the gold standard and this rent seeking activity, it seems like it all kind of line up. There'd be about 25 years coming out of the crisis where like people would just be less worried about what their neighbors thought of them doing that kind of stuff. And the people who have resources would do more of that. And then you fast forward that momentum of shifting in personal guardrails of behavior for fast forward 50 years.
Right.
And guess what? You're probably going to have some wealth inequality.
Right. And that's going to lead to that undercurrent of being uncomfortable with all that is going to ultimately lead to the final collapse of the systems, which is going to lead to that sort of revolutionary time that we live in now, where people where the whole thing has to be burned down, reset, and start over again.
Yeah. Now, as if that wasn't so you take again, this is a long winded and I'm not this isn't really necessarily to set up what I'm going to show you now, but it is interesting. Then you take all the things we've just talked about there and you have this kind of situation where people who can do
Yeah.
as far as making more money without really adding value or building
Yep.
things or contributing or whatever. And then you see the level of just waste that happens, and people are given, I don't know, what do you think that, I don't know, let's say the average family makes, I don't know, what do you think, 125,000 a year,
Something like
$150,000
that.
a year,
Yeah,
let's
two
say.
income,
Okay,
sure.
let's just take your average two income family. Let's say it's $150,000 a year. What percentage of their money do you think goes to taxes of any kind? Sales tax, property tax, federal income tax? Like, what would you spitball
Well,
on
I
that?
mean, if you're in California, it's probably over 50%.
California is north of 50. I do know that. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably country would, the countrywide, maybe 30, 35.
Yeah.
Be
And
my
I
guess.
shouldn't say I know that in California. I know that there are income brackets in California where it is well north of 50%
Yeah,
that they're
yeah.
paying. I don't know if it's around 140 or $150,000 a year, but all right. So now I'm going to play you this clip of this again. Who knows how much of this stuff is ever true, but I think this gal's on Fox Business or something like that. So I don't think it'd be completely out of nowhere, but so you take all the things we just talked about and then you add this to it.
Immigrants have put a strain on the housing market. What can you tell us? You signed a memorandum with the DHS to end wasteful misappropriation of taxpayer money.
Absolutely.
For, quote, illegal alien exploitation of housing programs. You're also working with the Federal Housing Administration to crack down on government-backed mortgages for illegals. How do they get a mortgage if you're actually illegal in the country?
Well, Marie, during the Biden administration, there were over 12 million illegal aliens that came over the border, straining our housing supply and making the costs go up. And so we work with Secretary Noem at DHS, as you alluded to make sure that only American citizens are living in HUD-funded housing. We also took away FHA-backed mortgages from illegal aliens during the Biden administration. They turned a blind eye. But we're going to keep the law to make sure that these mortgages, which are backed by the taxpayer, go only to the American people. And lastly, we are mandating that every public housing authority give us a comprehensive account who's living in every unit in taxpayer HUD-funded housing.
Wow. Actually, Davis, another impact of that wide open border.
Okay. So again, I don't, who knows? I mean, this guy is he's a bureaucrat. Like he's a policy enforcer, if not not a policy maker, but he's a guy who is in the thick of the machine in DC.
Right.
And being interviewed by, I think, like I said, I think she's like Fox News Business.
Yeah, I think it's that Maria Bartiromo. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So there's this wealth inequality that's happening at an ever increasing pace, the K-shaped economy, all this kind of stuff. Right. And then you're the family sitting home who's making your $140,000 a year, 35% of your money goes to income taxes of some sort. Groceries are up. Who knows how much, insurance. I mean, insurance is up like 20.
Oh, it's insane.
A year last 2 years.
Yeah, it's insane.
And then you see something like this as you're scrolling through Facebook, like I was when I saw this thing. Like it's again, like I keep going back to, I understand part of this is incompetence. I understand part of this is people doing the best they can when there's never a good answer. But man, it's really hard for me not to believe that some part of this is not just intentional. Like,
oh, sure.
You have to look at this and say, okay, if you wanted to completely wreck the place, what would you do? What are some ways you could do that? Well, you'd create a tremendous income inequality, and then you would bring in people who, maybe it's not fair for me to say, I'm going to guess your average illegal alien pays less percentage-wise and dollars than your average citizen in taxes.
I think that's a given. Yeah, I don't think that's a stretch.
And then, but they're going to get the same benefits of taxpayer-backed mortgages so that they can buy houses, which increases the house values because there's more people bidding on houses now. Supply and demand.
Sure, that's right.
How can it not be where you're just like, well, yeah, of course we're going to do this thing because it's just going to burn the whole thing down. Like it can't just be incompetence.
Well, no, I think so. There's one other layer to this too. I think, Brian, that's important. So there's some incompetence, sure, but I think there's an intentional manipulation of the system by people that can accumulate money and power in the short term. In other words, if you offer a whole bunch of benefits to people that that build their support of you. And yes, later on down the road, maybe you even know that later on down the road, this unsustainable system that's been created by offering all these benefits to people that are not legally or ethically due these benefits is going to be a problem. But you don't care because you are building a constituency and you're building an income flow for yourself and a power flow for yourself that benefits you only, and the system doesn't even matter. So it doesn't even have to be an intentional black hat, I want to destroy the system. It's, I don't care that the system is going to be destroyed because this benefits me and the constituency that I'm building. So you can say to millions of people, look at these benefits that we've given you, vote for us, support us, go out in the streets when we call you to go out in the streets and protest on our behalf, all of those kinds of things that is greed. It's basically greed and power hungry driven individuals end up doing that. Now, there's certainly a subset of that are like, they want to burn the entire system down, establish the communist utopia or autocratic utopia, whatever. But I think there's a big chunk of those that are like, let's create a system where we can benefit. I mean, again, this goes back to that statistic that I quote all the time that talk about how I think it's the 7 counties surrounding Washington, D.C. are the richest counties per capita in the country. When they're filled with people that work for the government and for government adjacent agencies, lobbyists and law firms.
Arguably rent seeking.
Rent seeking. And, if we learn anything from the Trump administration's, I would say, noble work in cutting off waste, fraud, and abuse throughout the federal government. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, the tens or hundreds of billions of dollars.
I don't think they've even done 1% of what the actual fraud and abuse.
Yeah, it's a tiny amount. But even within that, there are stories after stories after stories that are verified and have the facts behind them of billions and billions of dollars that have flowed out, here and there and everywhere. There, right now they're doing hearings in Congress about the set-asides that have been done on the federal level for contracts for different, minority groups, and how, people have, just they get the contract and then they solicit people to fulfill the contract, even if it doesn't really benefit the group that's being talked about. But there's one person that happens to fit the profile that, they're racially profiled. You hear about racial profiling on the negative side, but you hear about it on the side where you can use that to make money. So you've got, and that's another form of rent seeking, isn't it? I mean, it's just another form of using the system, using an overly complex system. And the only way, and see, here's the other thing that occurs to me in this entire conversation, that when you have a system that came out after the 40s, after World War II, you had relatively simple systems to establish the first turning. They weren't overly bureaucratic or complex. How can people that are not citizens of the United States benefit from FHA and all these different programs? How can they do that? They can do that because the systems become so complex with so many forms and so much technology that all you have to do is figure out how to fill out the forms and do all these, stand in your head with, twist 3/4 of the way when it's a full moon out, and then you can get the benefit. You design those systems to allow yourself to accumulate the money, and nobody notices because it's too complex to look at.
Right. And again, like we said in the beginning, like, who has the time? Like,
nobody has the time. No, nobody can look at it. It's too complex.
You got to go home and change diapers and buy groceries. Like,
right. And and see, this is also what then leads to the collapse, because that it's corrupt. Nobody has any trust in our institutions anymore.
No,
nobody trusts.
Who thinks everything in DC is like straight up? Of course.
Yeah, nobody trusts the only people that trust the institutions are the people that are getting paychecks from the institutions. That's the one constituency group that the institutions have left. So but at that point, eventually you say nobody trusts the institutions, we're being screwed, and that's when that impulse for normal people, but the normal people that are just raising their kids and trying to make a living and try to pay their mortgage, that's when the impulse of those people is, No, the whole system needs to be revamped. We need to pull the plug and do a reset, start over again,
Yeah.
build it back up from zero. And that's where the fourth turning and the first turning, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy of the destruction of the old system and the building of the new system.
Yeah, and I think it goes in conjunction with, I agree. Like they lose hope and they lose faith in like fighting for this thing. And
Yes.
I think part of them is what you're describing, where it's like, it's so corrupt and broken. It probably has to go. But the other side of that coin is, if you went back 25 years in time, those people would have said, I would give my life to save this country. And I would give
Yes.
my life for the ideals this country is based upon.
Yeah.
And I got to imagine that's diminishing as well, where it's like, not only are they like cynical about it, but also less hopeful and less willing to sacrifice in tax dollars or their life or time or whatever
Yeah.
it is to support this thing that clearly is broken. Right?
Well, I'm one of those people. I mean, I'm one of those kids that grew up and, you go to the 4th of July and you see all the flags around and I get choked up and, the Star Spangled Banner plays and you get a little teary eyed, all of that kind of stuff. I'm one of those patriotic kids, and that mythology, and that's a mythology of the country, right? And now it's not a mythology in the sense that it wasn't true. It's a true mythology of the country. What is America? Sea to shining sea, the rocket's red glare, all of that is a true mythology. Now, when you destroy the mythology that underlies the country, then the people that were the pillars that supported the country and that supported the structure and were like, yeah, we've got some problems, but we're going to recover. We always do, this kind of thing. When they lose hope and when they no longer believe the mythology, or when they say you have committed sacrilege against the mythology of what it means to be America, then the country is in existential threat. It's in an existentially precarious position because those are the people that would have stood by you even when you do stupid things. It's like we still stood by the country during Watergate, right? We still stood by the country during the Iran hostage crisis. So we stood by it through all of those scenarios that were painful to us to be a part of. But there comes a time, and I really do think it comes back to this feeling. It's the mythology, the feeling of being an American. When that gets crushed, you're like, no, I'm not so willing to stand by it anymore. And two, how willing am I to play by all the rules? Now, I'm not going to go out and rob a bank. It's just not my morals to do such a thing.
Yeah.
But all of the rules that accrue to this gigantic system, you're like, I'm just not playing. I'm just not playing anymore.
Yeah, it seems like a indifference to the perpetuation of the mythology, like you said.
Yeah,
and also the flip side being like, you know what, this probably is broken, and being okay with a new, hopefully improved version.
Right. And it's broken. It is broken, and it's broken beyond repair. That's when we get to that point. So I realize it's been broken a long time.
I don't know very many people who earnestly believe that when they go vote, it's actually going to make things better.
Right.
It's about slowing the decline.
Right. Yeah. It's like maybe the Titanic will sink a little less slowly, and so some ships will come in and save us in the meantime, or something like that. Yeah.
But you contrast that with like my first election, I could vote in as an adult was when Bill Clinton, Bush Sr., and Ross Perot were there.
Oh yeah.
And in that election, I was only 18, so I didn't know anything about anything back then. But it was, people listened to what they said because they were casting a vision for their future, the future they wanted to create, and people believed. Now, with some cynicism, I'm not saying that sure. Of course Ross Perot says this thing's going to happen. Of course it's going to. I don't mean like blind, faith kind of a thing. But it was more about like what we can build and how we can improve it and things like that. And now it's just, we got to stop the other team because they're taking us down faster.
Yeah, well, and that is, yeah, we don't see people, running on, like the Reaganist vision of a city on a hill and, and America's best days are ahead. Even if they do say that, then it's followed up by America's best days are ahead. But if that guy wins, we're all doomed,
Well,
so
I mean, look at 2016 when Trump ran. What did Trump run on? Close the border.
right,
We have to stop this evil. We have to stop this bad thing.
right,
Your life it's evil that your life is being ruined by this open immigration policy, right?
right.
That's
Yep.
not a
It's not a
vision of a
hopeful vision.
beautiful. That's not a hopeful vision. It's
No,
stopping pain.
right,
That is not what Ross Perot was doing.
right.
Ross Perot talked about the giant sucking sound and like, hey, there's bad things happening, but he followed that up with, and here's my vision of how to fix it.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's a verse in the Bible where there's no vision, the people perish. And, if there's no positive vision, in running a business, if you don't cast a vision for the good things that are going to happen in your business, if you're not always saying our best days are ahead and here's how we're going to get there, even during tough times, when business is down or the economy's in turmoil, as a business owner, as a leader, you still have to say, here are the things, here's what we're going to accomplish next year. And so, I'm going through with my team, it's December of 2025. We're going through vision casting for 2026. And, I believe that things are going to get even better. We're going to have our best year ever, all those things. If I came to my team and said, well, we're going to stop those evil marketing people down the road because they just want to, put your kids in change, nobody's going to follow you and it's going to collapse.
And you can see it in real time. Like once in a while, again, I'm not watching it all that often, but once in a while I'll catch a news clip or I'll see a little video clip on social media or something like that. And Trump will mention the golden age. We're coming into the golden age. So he's saying the words, but the only people who repeat the words are like people in his cabinet,
Right,
like
right.
bureaucrats who I've not heard a single citizen talk about the golden age. Not one.
No, I haven't either. No, even people that are on in his, even on the right side of the aisle, people aren't saying it.
Yeah. No, people just don't believe it. Like
No.
it's just not believable. Versus what year was the I'm with Ike buttons that people wore? I don't know what it was.
Oh yeah, so that would have been in the 50s
or something like that.
Yeah, that would have been 50s. Yeah.
Yeah. Or so 50 whatever year it was. Like
late
people
40s,
walking around like not just on election day, like
right.
the weeks leading up to the election with their I'm with Ike buttons.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine a world where that would be the case today.
Yeah. No, you can't. No.
Except for on social media when people are like, hey, I'm with Jasmine and Crockett. I stand with Jasmine and Crockett. Like you see that stuff, but it's all hollow. It's all fake.
Right.
Nobody in the real world does that, right?
Right. Yep, and that is for Kenny G's benefit. That's another hallmark of the fourth turning of the collapse that's coming. Now, you're going to have prepared. I think the thing to do in this age. So we're not going to save this age that we're in. We're not going to save this current system that we're in, but we do need to plan for the next system and for the way that the good parts of this system that we can implement in the next system. So I do think it's important for people that do have a positive vision to say, not to throw up their hands and give up, but to say, look, I don't think we're going to elect people in this current structure that we have that are going to turn things around necessarily, but I think we can elect people and start to move towards a system that is going to address these problems to create a more balanced system, a place where people can prosper more, not just eat the rich. So, you can take that message like that first graph you showed, where it's like when in 72 and, it's flat 115% versus 200 and some odd percent. So there's two ways to address that. It's like one way to address that is to get angry and to say, eat the rich, eat the rich. They're manipulating us. Okay, well, there's, I understand the anger. I get it. I'm not happy about
tax the rich. They say eat the rich.
Oh yeah, no, eat the rich is they say eat the rich. Sure. That's look it up. You Google it. Eat the rich.
I'll have to check that out.
No, that's true. But the other way to approach that is, okay, we've got an unfair system. What is a system? What's the kind of system we can create that's not based on anger, it's not based on envy, but it's based on opportunity. So that's the difference. You can look at these problems that we have and either address them with anger and envy and negative emotions, or you can look at it and say, we're going to reimagine what American, democracy, what free enterprise looks like. Because the danger is that if it's a system that's derived out of anger, then we end up in socialism or communism or autocracy or something like that. If we end up with a reimagined system that's still based on free enterprise, but eliminates the problems of, or at least reduces dramatically the problems of rent seeking and just manipulation of the system for personal benefit, then I think you're on a positive track.
Yeah, and it feels like you and I talking last week about the fight seems to be over. You were talking about utopia. I said it was like over what's fair.
Yeah.
And when if you're gonna make policy for 330 million and you're gonna say, hey, we're gonna do this thing because it's fair, you have, especially in this era where there's this economic disparity,
right?
You have to figure like fair for whom,
right.
And right now we're not unified, so you have to pick camps where what's fair for 300 175 or whatever million people in 1941 after Pearl Harbor,
right?
Like that was crystal clear. It was fair for everyone that we protect ourselves and go out and prevent this tyranny from taking over the world. And that was fair that we do that. It was fair that we make the sacrifices necessary to do it economically and with lives spent. Like it was fair that has to happen. And until we're all unified, like we won't ever agree upon what's fair. And I heard this Arabic saying, it goes, me against my brother and I against our cousin, me and my brother and my cousin against the world.
Interesting.
Right? So, and anyhow, it kind of feels like that now. It's like we're just all these camps, but when a big enough catastrophe happens, boom, we're all unified.
Right.
And what's fair for everyone will be crystal clear, and we won't have to negotiate much about it. And shit will happen in DC really fast to undo some of the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
And everyone will say, yep, this is the best thing for all of us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's necessary to clear away all the bureaucracy and all the detritus and all the complexity of a system that is broken and manipulative.
Whether it'll be fair that we're a socialist country or a free market country, that's yet to be determined. But we'll all like it, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
we'll be happy about it.
The benefit of, or not the benefit, but the way I think that plays out is you get to a point where it's like, well, anything's got to be better than what we got. So that's the danger and the benefit.
Again, the needs on Maslow's hierarchy of needs probably drops a couple pegs too.
100%. Yeah, totally.
And the criteria you're using to determine what's fair is probably not the same as it is today when we're in this self-actualization mode.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly right. No, I think that's true.
All right. Well, it's going to be fascinating to watch and see how it goes. That's for sure. So, coming into the holiday season, there's still Christmas carols playing. There's still kids looking forward to Santa Claus. There's still all that good stuff. So, there's still Christmas lights on houses when you drive down the street. So
absolutely.
We made it another year, Dave.
We made it another year. Absolutely. And there's still light. The lights are still on and I'm not lacking for food. So I feel blessed about all of that.
So as Dave mentioned earlier, we're talking to the future generations about what it's like to live through this tumultuous time. We'd love to get your input. If you think there's something we got especially right or wrong, you can tell us at unsilentpodcast.com, or Rumble has a great comment section. Until next week, this is Dave and Brian signing off.
See you next week.
Do you want to be unsilent? Make your voice heard on our social media channels and share where you think we got it right or wrong. Go to unsilentpodcast.com for social links so you can join the discussion.